You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
It started with something small. One of those moments that doesn't feel big until later when you're lying in bed, wide awake at 2 in the morning, replaying it over and over, dissecting every sound, every silence, every word that wasn't said. Saturday evening in Springfield is usually the calmest time of my week. The kind of calm that feels earned. At 61, I've traded long shifts and aching knees for quiet hours spent organizing tools in the garage, tuning up the old pickup, or sitting on the porch with a glass of iced tea and a breeze that smells like fresh-cut grass and rust. Retirement had been good to me so far, routine, peaceful, familiar. Emily was supposed to be in Indianapolis for a 4-day healthcare conference. She'd left Thursday morning, suitcase in hand, pecked my cheek at the doorway like she always did. "You sure you'll be okay while I'm gone?" she asked with that soft, teasing smile. "No burnt toast, no midnight cereal dinners?" "I'll survive," I told her. "Might even enjoy the quiet." I didn't mean that in a bad way. We've been married 34 years, since I was 27, back when I still had a head full of hair and she still looked at me like I could fix the whole world with a wrench and a promise. We had our routines, our quirks, our disagreements like anyone else. But if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said we were solid. Steady. Dependable. So when I called her that evening, I wasn't expecting anything unusual. Just wanted to check in. Ask how the conference was going, if she'd eaten yet, maybe hear her complain about the hotel coffee or the stale croissants they always served at those things. Simple stuff. Comforting stuff. I remember the time, 7:38 p.m., because I just sat down after fixing a stubborn drawer in the kitchen. My hands still smelled faintly like WD-40 and pine dust. I dialed her number like I'd done a dozen times before. Put it on speaker and set the phone on the table. 1 ring. 2. Then someone picked up. But it wasn't Emily. "Hello," a man said. Just that. 1 word. Low voice. Calm, maybe slightly amused. And then I heard it. Laughter in the background. Not a burst of it, more like chuckling, warm and private, as if whoever was there didn't realize they'd just been caught in a moment they shouldn't be sharing. Hello," I said again, sitting up straighter. There was a pause. No background noise now. Just dead, sudden quiet. Then the call ended. I stared at the phone for a few seconds, blinking like maybe it would make sense if I waited long enough. Like maybe I'd misheard. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe Emily accidentally handed her phone to someone. Maybe. I called again. Straight to voicemail. My chest tightened, but I told myself not to jump to conclusions. She's probably in a noisy hallway, I reasoned. Or maybe her phone died. 10 minutes later, the phone rang. Emily's name lit up the screen. "Hey, Han," she said, a little too upbeat. "Sorry, I was in the hallway and the signal dropped. Did you try to call?" "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone level. "Some guy answered." She laughed. Just a short burst, light and practiced. "Oh, that must have been the concierge. I had the phone at the front desk charging for a bit. Maybe he picked it up thinking it was a guest call or something." I didn't respond right away. She filled the silence quickly. Anyway, the sessions today were so dull I could have taken a nap right in the middle of the keynote. But I met this woman from St. Louis who works in geriatric care. We hit it off. "You'd like her. Reminds me of Linda back in '04, remember her?" I nodded to the air, listening more to her rhythm than her words. She was rambling. She only rambled when she was trying to cover something. I knew that pattern by now, the way her voice sped up, the shift in subject, the slight edge of defensiveness hidden under all that cheerful banter. But more than that, I knew that voice I'd heard wasn't the concierge. It wasn't anyone in a uniform. It was a voice that belonged in a living room, not a lobby. A voice that didn't sound surprised to answer her phone. A voice that didn't say, "Sorry, wrong number," or "Hang on, let me get her." A voice that belonged somewhere it shouldn't. Still, I didn't press her. Not then. "I'm glad you're enjoying it," I said finally. She exhaled a little too hard, like she'd passed some invisible test. "Yeah. It's been good. You keeping yourself busy?" "I fixed that kitchen drawer," I said. Finally got it to stop sticking. "See," she said, laughing again. "You don't need me." I didn't say anything to that. I just smiled to myself and let the conversation drift back into small talk. She told me she was turning in early. I told her good night. We said we loved each other. She hung up first. I stared at the phone in my hand long after the call ended. I kept hearing that man's voice in my head. That chuckle. That awkward, split-second pause before the silence. And the thing that scared me most? I recognized that voice. I couldn't place it right away. It was one of those tip-of-the-tongue moments, familiar but out of reach. Like trying to remember the lyrics to a song you haven't heard in 20 years. I knew I'd heard him before. Not from TV. Not from the radio. From life. From somewhere close. I sat there in the kitchen for a while, letting the unease settle in like a fog. I'm not a jealous man, not in the way people mean when they say that. I've never been the type to go through her things or question every text. I trusted Emily. I gave her space. We weren't joined at the hip and I liked it that way. But trust doesn't disappear all at once. It dies in pieces. And this was the first piece that fell off. That night, I didn't sleep well. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to rationalize everything. Trying to match that voice to a name. Was it a coworker? Someone from church? Someone she knew from her volunteer group? At 2:14 a.m., I remembered. Derek. That was the name. The voice. A man we hadn't seen in over a decade, but who'd recently sent Emily a Facebook message. I'd seen the notification flash across her screen a few months back. Derek M. sent a friend request. I asked who it was and she brushed it off. Oh, someone from way back. Remember that hospital gala we went to in '09? He was on the board then. Haven't talked to him in years. She accepted the request. I didn't think much of it. Now I was thinking about it. I got up, made coffee, and sat by the window watching the sky turn from black to blue. Birds chirped. Neighbors took out trash bins. Somewhere down the street, a lawn sprinkler hissed to life. And in the middle of that ordinary morning, something inside me shifted. I wasn't sure what I was dealing with yet. I didn't have facts. But I had a feeling. The kind that crawls under your skin and whispers, "You're not imagining this." The kind that grows louder each time you try to ignore it. Something was wrong. And I was done pretending it wasn't. You ever look back on a stretch of time and realize you missed 100 red flags waving right in your face? That's what happened to me. After that call, after that voice I couldn't explain away, it was like someone turned on a projector in my head. Scene after scene started replaying moments I'd brushed off, explained away, forgiven without even realizing forgiveness was needed. It started small, like it always does. A shift in how she said goodnight. A colder edge to her tone. She stopped double-checking if I'd remembered to take my pills. She started sleeping with her phone face down on the nightstand. That used to be my thing. I didn't want the screen lighting up the room. But Emily? She used to scroll through it without a care. Now it barely left her side. Then there were the work trips. That's how she phrased them, work trips. Like they were some kind of burden. Like she was always doing someone else a favor. It started with a one-day seminar in St. Louis. Then a weekend symposium in Cincinnati. Then a 4-day workshop in Chicago. Always last minute. Always vague. No printed itineraries left on the kitchen table like she used to do. No more folded agendas pinned with a smiley face magnet on the fridge. And the packing changed. She used to throw her stuff into the same worn roller bag we'd used since '08. Suddenly she had a new carry-on. Sleek. Designer. One I hadn't seen her buy. When I asked, she said she got it on clearance at the outlet mall. I nodded. Didn't think much of it. That was the problem. I didn't think much of anything back then. She started coming home from these trips with gifts. Not for me, she'd stopped that years ago, but for herself. A new necklace. A silk scarf. A smartwatch that I knew she hadn't mentioned saving up for. I asked about that one. Oh, it was a raffle prize, she said with a little grin. I got lucky. I smiled back. Didn't press. Then came the electronics, an upgraded phone, newer earbuds, some fitness tracker she never actually used. I caught a glimpse of the packaging receipts once in the trash. None of it came from hospital vendors or wellness seminars. It came from high-end retail stores in cities she wasn't supposed to be visiting. I told myself it was work perks, vendor samples. That maybe the hospital reimbursed her for something. That maybe, just maybe, I was being paranoid. But that voice on the phone? That changed everything. I started seeing the pattern. Connecting the dots between her distance and the days she came home smelling like citrus cologne and expensive hotel soap. The bags she brought back from her workshops were packed differently, folded too neatly, clothes she'd never wear around me. High heels that had scuff marks from ballroom floors, not boardrooms. And then there was Brooke. My sister. 10 years younger than me. Always blunt, always skeptical of Emily. They never got along. Not since the wedding. Brooke always said Emily had a look in her eye like she was settling for something she planned to change. I told her she was overreacting. For 30 years, they barely spoke unless it was required at family gatherings. But suddenly, just in the last few months, Emily started inviting Brooke over. Offering her wine, laughing too loudly at her jokes, playing the generous hostess. I'd walk into the kitchen and find them at the table, sipping Pinot like old friends, their conversation halting the second I stepped in. At first, I was glad. Thought maybe they were turning a corner. I even joked about it once. World must be ending, I said. You two getting along? Emily just smiled. Maybe I've matured. But it didn't feel like maturity. It felt strategic. Like she was trying to stack the deck for alliances. Or worse, distract me. Brooke didn't buy it either. She's different lately, she said during one of our rare walks. Like she's trying too hard. You sure everything's all right? I told her yes. I always said yes. I didn't know how to say anything else. Even our in asterisk Macy changed. I won't go into details, but it's hard not to notice when someone starts treating affection like an obligation. Like clocking in. Like a thing to cross off a list. The warmth was gone. She used to trace the lines of my face in bed, whisper jokes in the dark, ask me about the dreams I couldn't remember. Lately it was all polite silence. Efficient. Emotionless. I started staying up later. Watching old westerns until 2 a.m. Just to avoid the awkwardness of lying beside someone who felt like a stranger. Sometimes she didn't even come to bed at all. Oh, I fell asleep on the couch watching TV, she'd say in the morning. But the throw blanket would still be folded. The cushions undisturbed. I told myself it was stress. Burnout. Midlife weirdness. We'd been married long enough to know the valleys came and went. But even in the lowest valleys, Emily never shut me out. Until now. One day, she came home wearing earrings I'd never seen. Gold hoops. Subtle, tasteful, expensive looking. New. I asked. She paused, hand brushing them like she forgot they were there. Oh, these? Got them at a little shop downtown. Clearance bin. Clearance again. That clearance bin must have had a heck of a jewelry section. The thing is, I wanted to believe her. Desperately. Because if I didn't, then the only other option was that I'd let my guard down so far that I'd been letting another man into my life through the cracks in our marriage. And that possibility was too bitter to taste. Then something else happened. She stopped planning things with me. No weekend plans. No grocery lists made together. No dinner ideas shared during car rides. Instead, she was always busy. Busy with work. Busy with a report. Busy with errands that she never explained. Errands that took hours. One Saturday, I suggested we take a drive. Something we hadn't done in years. Her face went tight. I have to get my nails done, she said. And I promised I'd call my mom. She left an hour later wearing makeup. Fresh curls in her hair. Perfume that made the air behind her shimmer. I sat on the porch and watched her car disappear down the street. She didn't call her mom. I know that now. And yet, I still didn't confront her. I think I was afraid. Not just of the answer, but of what the answer would mean. If I was right, then everything I'd believed about us, about our life, would come crashing down. And if I was wrong, then maybe I really had become one of those old men who thought their wives were always just out of reach. Paranoid, controlling, desperate to be needed. So I waited, watched. I became quiet. The kind of quiet that notices details, that listens to shifts in footsteps, changes in tone. I started taking mental notes, filing away every strange schedule, every dodged question. I didn't stop loving her. That was the hard part. Love doesn't switch off just because your gut tells you something's broken. But I started loving her differently, cautiously, like you'd love a dog that started growling for no reason. And all the while, that voice played over and over in my head. One word. Hello. That split-second pause. That familiarity. That chuckle. And Emily shifting the subject like her life depended on it. I'd ignored the signs for too long. But now I was paying attention. I don't know what I expected to find when I started looking. Part of me hoped I was wrong. That maybe I was just some old fool trying to solve a puzzle that didn't exist. But deep down, I think I already knew. You don't go looking for proof unless you're sure it's out there. The confirmation came on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 days after the call. Emily was still out of town, supposedly in Indianapolis until Thursday evening. She had texted me a photo that morning. Her standing next to a hotel conference banner, smiling like a woman who had nothing to hide. But the timestamp on the image was off. Way off. My phone showed it had been taken the day before, at 11:03 p.m. I don't know how I noticed. Maybe it was habit, maybe it was suspicion, but I tapped the image and checked the metadata. Location, Louisville, not Indianapolis. That alone would have been enough to crack something open inside me. But it didn't stop there. That afternoon, I got an alert from our joint bank account. One of our older ones, one we barely used anymore but never closed. I kept it open because it had our wedding date in the account number, and Emily thought it was cute once. We used it to move money around now and then, usually for vacations or gifts. But this alert? It said the account had been closed. Not just withdrawn. Closed. I hadn't touched it. When I logged in, everything snapped into focus. Dozens of transactions over the last 6 months. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, spa appointments, and they weren't from Indianapolis. They were spread across places she had no reason to be. Louisville, Evansville, Nashville, Cincinnati. Cities just far enough to feel anonymous. Most of the charges came through on weekends she'd claimed to be working or visiting her mother. One transaction made my blood run cold. 2 nights at a boutique hotel in downtown Louisville, booked under her name, but with a second guest listed on the reservation. D. Morris. Derek. I stared at the screen, my eyes burning. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, not yet, but it was no longer a matter of suspicion. It was a matter of connecting facts I had ignored. Her sudden jewelry, the weekend disappearances, the soft smiles when she thought I wasn't looking. I got up, walked to the spare bedroom, what she called her reading room, and pulled the drawer on the side table. Inside was her old tablet. We hadn't used it in years, but I figured it was worth a try. Maybe I'd find some saved passwords, browser history, anything that could answer the questions I hadn't been brave enough to ask her directly. The battery was dead. I charged it, waited, paced. My hands were shaking. When it finally turned on, I opened the gallery app. There weren't many pictures. Most had been deleted. But Emily never was thorough with technology. She'd forgotten about the cloud backups, the cache files left behind. Some were blurry. Some were cropped oddly. But one folder, buried under a generic name like Work Docs, held everything I needed to see. Emily at a pool. Sunglasses. A drink in hand. Emily at a restaurant table, leaning forward in laughter. Emily on a hotel balcony, wrapped in a robe I didn't recognize. And next to her, in more photos than I could stomach, was Derek. Same smile I remembered from years ago. His hair was thinner now, his face a little puffier. But it was him, laughing, holding her hand, touching her back, kissing her neck in one photo I couldn't even finish looking at. Each photo felt like a hammer blow to my chest. All those years of quiet loyalty, of patience, of forgiveness, reduced to JPGs. Digital evidence of something that had unraveled long before I realized it. And she had hidden it so well. That was what got to me the most. Not the betrayal itself, but the effort she'd put into keeping it from me. The planning, the passwords, the deflections, the way she'd smiled in the mornings and asked if I wanted pancakes, knowing full well she was living a second life behind my back. I sat in the chair and just stared at the screen. My fingers hovered above the power button, too stunned to do anything else. Eventually, I copied the files, all of them, onto a flash drive. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe I needed to prove to myself it wasn't a dream. Then I went to the hallway closet and opened the drawer at the bottom. Inside, where we kept the tax documents and emergency manuals, was our prenuptial agreement. 34 years ago, before we said, "I do," Emily had insisted we sign one. I hadn't cared. She had more assets back then. An inheritance from her father's estate. I was just a welder with a beat-up truck and a toolbox. The prenup was simple, clear, dry as dust. But there it was in bold print near the end. In the event of infidelity by either party, the guilty party shall forfeit all claims to joint property, including but not limited to the primary residence, savings accounts, and shared retirement benefits. She'd written that clause herself, said it was to protect us both. Funny how life comes full circle. I sat at the kitchen table for hours that night, rereading it, thinking about the little things. The back rubs she used to give me when I came home sore, the way she folded my t-shirts into perfect rectangles, the smell of her hair when we danced in the living room. All of it started to feel like a cover story, a well-rehearsed act. Like she'd been winding down the clock on our marriage for years and I'd been too blind, or too trusting, to see it. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed up on the porch with a blanket and a thermos of coffee, watching the sky turn the same dull gray it had the morning after that phone call. It was cold, but I didn't feel it. Not really. I didn't cry. Not then. I think the sadness would come later, after the dust settled. But in that moment what I felt wasn't grief. It was clarity. A brutal kind of stillness. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to scream or throw things or break down on the floor begging her to explain herself. She had made her choices. One transaction at a time. One lie at a time. And now it was my turn to make mine. The morning after I found the photos, the receipts, and the prenup, I stood in the middle of our living room and took a long, hard look around. Everything looked the same. Same beige couch we picked out at that furniture outlet. Same rug that always bunched up in the corners. Same framed photos on the mantel of smiling holidays and anniversary dinners. But nothing felt the same. It's strange how a house can suddenly feel foreign. Like the walls are leaning away from you. Like the air itself doesn't trust you anymore. Or maybe I was the one who no longer trusted it. Emily was due back Thursday. That gave me 48 hours. So I started with the locks. The guy at the hardware store didn't ask questions. Just sold me a new deadbolt and a couple of doorknob sets with matching keys. I spent that afternoon unscrewing old bolts and swapping them out while the radio played softly in the background. It felt like performing surgery. Precise, quiet, methodical. After that, I called the utility companies and updated everything to reflect me as the sole account holder. Water, electric, gas, insurance. I gave them my phone number, my email. I removed hers without a second thought. The cable account was trickier, it was in her name. But I canceled it altogether and scheduled a new install under mine. Let her try to explain that one if she ever came back. Then came the harder part. Her things. Every room in the house had pieces of her scattered through it. Scarves flung over chairs. Books left open on side tables. Perfume bottles in the upstairs bathroom like little glass trophies. I didn't want to throw anything out. I wasn't trying to be cruel. But I couldn't live with them either. So I boxed them up. I started with her closet. I pulled out dresses, blouses, pantsuits, all hung so neatly I felt like I was dismantling a museum exhibit. Then came the drawers. Jewelry boxes. A hairbrush still caught with strands of her dark auburn hair. I labeled each box, bedroom, bathroom, kitchen. I stacked them in the garage. The last thing I touched was the wedding album. It sat on the bottom shelf in the living room, tucked between old travel guides and a cookbook neither of us ever used. I held it for a second longer than I should have, my thumb tracing the spine. Then I put it in the box labeled miscellaneous and closed the lid. I wasn't angry. That's what surprised me most. I wasn't filled with rage. I didn't feel violent or bitter or even loud. I just felt focused. Like something ancient had woken up in me. Something quiet and stubborn. Like when your truck breaks down on the highway and no one's coming, you just get out, roll up your sleeves, and start walking. That evening, Brooke showed up. She'd called earlier when I texted her, cryptic but clear, "You were right. You always were. I need to talk." When she stepped through the front door and saw the boxes, she stopped cold. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I found proof," I said. "It's him. Derek." She didn't say, "I told you so." Didn't even gloat. She walked over to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, then leaned against the counter like she needed it to stay upright. "You okay?" she asked. I shrugged. "I will be." Brooke looked around the house and exhaled. "You know," she said after a pause, "this place already feels different." "How so?" "Lighter. Like it finally belongs to someone." That caught me off guard. I hadn't thought about who the house belonged to. I just knew who I didn't want in it anymore. Brooke offered to help with the rest of the packing. I didn't argue. We went through the remaining rooms, boxing up picture frames, decorations, random drawers full of cards and receipts, and clipped coupons Emily always meant to use. By midnight, the place looked stripped down. Bare, but clean. I offered Brooke the guest room. She didn't hesitate. She'd been staying with a friend for a while, floating between leases. Said she'd only planned to crash for a night or two. But something about having her there made the space feel settled. It wasn't romantic, not then. It was familiar. Safe. Someone who knew me before I'd become this version of myself. Someone who didn't ask me to explain every silence. The next day, I called my lawyer. Her name was Deborah Hall. We'd used her once before when we refinanced the house, and I remembered she had a voice like polished wood, firm, smooth, unshakable. "I'm ready," I said. Deborah didn't ask what I meant. She just said, "Come in." When I sat across from her the next morning, I slid over the flash drive, the printed receipts, and the prenup. She scanned the clause and nodded. "You know this gives you leverage," she said. "I know. She won't walk away with anything," Deborah continued. "Not if you play it right." "I'm not trying to ruin her," I said. "I just want her gone." Deborah raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that? Because if we file this right, you won't have to pay her a cent. Not alimony. Not property division. Not even access to retirement accounts. Then file it that way." She slid the papers across the table. "Sign here." And that was that. A few days passed. Brooke stayed. We shared meals, shared silence. She didn't hover, didn't ask too many questions. Sometimes we sat on the back porch with coffee, watching the sky change colors, saying nothing. Then one afternoon, I found her in the living room, rearranging the furniture. "What are you doing?" I asked. She smiled sheepishly. "It's driving me crazy. The couch is too close to the TV and that chair's just wrong." I chuckled. "Do what you want." She paused, then said something I didn't expect. "You know this house never felt like yours." "Not really. It always felt like Emily's showroom. But now? Now it feels like someone actually lives here." And she was right. Without the polished decor, the meaningless trinkets, the photos of staged joy, it felt real. Honest. Like breathing after holding your lungs hostage for years. I ordered new bedsheets. Different curtains. I repainted the hallway a shade of soft gray. Little things. Subtle but permanent. Each change felt like reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd lost. Not just the house, but myself. She came back on a Thursday. Her flight was supposed to land at 5:50 p.m. and I imagined she expected to be home by 6:30. That's the kind of precision Emily lived by, right down to the minute. It was how she ran her life, her schedule, and apparently her affairs. But when she pulled into the driveway that evening, nothing greeted her the way she was used to. No porch light left on. No warm glow through the curtains. Just the flat, gray face of a house that no longer welcomed her. I watched from inside as she stepped out of the car, hair still styled in soft curls, wheeling her silver suitcase behind her like she'd just wrapped up a successful conference. She was on the phone, laughing. Maybe with him. I'll never know. The moment she reached for her keys, I saw it. That pause. The way her hand froze just before the lock. She tried the key once. It didn't turn. She frowned, tried again, a little more forcefully. Still nothing. Then she stepped back and stared at the door, confused. She knocked. I didn't answer. She knocked again, harder this time. A pause. Then the sound of rummaging, her phone out again. Moments later, my phone buzzed. "Emily, hey, I think the lock's jammed. Can you open the door?" I didn't respond. A minute passed. Another buzz. "Emily, Thomas? Are you home?" I waited until she knocked again. This time, her voice came with it, sharp and uncertain. "Thomas? Hello?" That's when Brooke opened the door. She stepped into the frame calmly, her expression unreadable. She didn't say anything right away. Just leaned on the door frame and looked at Emily like someone inspecting a return they didn't remember ordering. Emily blinked. "Brooke? What are you? What are you doing here?" Brooke tilted her head. "Living here?" Emily laughed nervously. "Very funny. Is Thomas here?" Brooke didn't flinch. "He's not taking visitors tonight." Emily's smile faltered. "Excuse me." Brooke stepped out, pulling the door shut behind her. "Emily, you need to read the envelope on the mailbox." Emily looked past her, saw it. A plain manila folder, sealed, tucked against the side of the mailbox under her name, though the name itself was no longer printed there. The little vinyl sticker that had read "The Bakers" now simply read "T.E. Baker." She grabbed the envelope with trembling hands and opened it right there in the driveway. I knew what was inside. A formal notice from my lawyer. Served. Filed. A cover letter outlining her forfeiture under the prenup clause. A list of possessions already donated or boxed. A notification of her removed access to the property and all affiliated accounts. Brooke stepped aside. "You can stand here and reread it, or you can leave. Your choice." Emily's mouth opened, closed. Her skin went pale. "Is this a joke?" Brooke didn't smile. "Nope." She turned and walked back inside, shutting the door with the same quiet finality I had felt when I first pulled the prenup from that drawer. From upstairs, I watched as Emily stood frozen in the driveway for what felt like forever. She paced once, twice. Made a phone call, probably to a friend who wouldn't pick up. She looked toward the garage like she expected something to change. Like maybe the house would blink its lights or wave her inside like nothing had happened. But it didn't. I didn't. That night, she didn't come back. Maybe she went to a hotel. Maybe she went to Derek. I didn't care. For the first time, the house felt still. Not just quiet, still. No tension buzzing under the walls. No second-guessing what was real and what wasn't. Brooke made pasta. We sat at the table and ate while soft jazz played from the speaker she brought in from her car. No small talk. No forced smiles. Just food and breathing and presence. The next day, the phone calls started. At first, she was calm. Left messages. Thomas, I think there's been a mistake. I came home and, well, I'm not sure what's going on. Please call me. Then came the texts. Emily, I don't understand why you're doing this. Can we talk, just the two of us? Emily, I miss you. Whatever this is, we can fix it. Emily, please don't throw this away over a misunderstanding. Then anger. Emily, you can't just lock me out. This is our house. Emily, you're being cruel. Is this because of Brooke? Is that what this is? I didn't answer any of them. It took 2 days for the tone to shift again. Desperation this time. Emily, I need somewhere to go. I thought maybe we could at least talk. Emily, nobody else is picking up. I don't know what to do. Emily, please don't leave me like this. Brooke saw the texts once when my phone was face up on the kitchen counter. She didn't say anything, but I could tell she read more than a few. She just gave me that look. The one that says, I'm here if you want to talk. But I'm not pushing. Funny how someone who used to barely speak to me could now read me better than the woman I married. The neighbors started to notice by the weekend. I got a few cautious texts, mostly from older folks on the block. Jim, next door, everything okay over there? Tom? Saw your missus outside looking a bit flustered the other night. Linda, across the street, saw Brooke taking in some boxes. Everything all right? I replied simply, all good here. Just a transition. That Saturday, Emily showed up again. I was in the backyard, pruning the hedges when I heard the gate creak. She didn't call my name. Just walked slowly across the grass like she expected to find me kneeling with open arms, ready to forgive it all. Thomas, she said softly. I stood and turned. Her face looked worn, tired. Her makeup was lighter than usual, and there were shadows under her eyes I didn't remember being there before. I just want to talk. I nodded toward the lawn chair across from mine. All right. She sat carefully, brushing invisible lint off her skirt. I didn't think you'd actually let me say anything. I'm listening. She looked down at her hands. I made a mistake. I know. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I believe that. But you have to understand, things weren't right for a while. I felt alone. You didn't tell me you were alone. You told someone else. She looked up at that. Her lip trembled. I never wanted to hurt you. You didn't just hurt me, Emily. You built a second life around someone else. And you buried me under the version of yourself you left behind. A long pause. What happens now? She asked. I stood. Now? You leave. That's it. That's it. She stood, eyes glassy. And Brooke. I didn't answer that. Not because I didn't know, but because it was none of her business anymore. She left without another word. Walked through the gate, got into her car, and drove off. And with that, the woman I had once built my life around became a shadow at the edge of my lawn. A silhouette fading in my rear view.